It's no surprise that PlayStation 2 is one of my all-time favorite gaming consoles. It's a console that I grew up with during my early teenage years, and a lot of my favorite games of all time came from that console. One of the games that I keep coming back to is none other than the third Tenchu game, Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. Tenchu Wrath of Heaven is considered by many, including myself, as the best Tenchu game in the series. This game was one of the first PS2 games that I played, and it was also one of the reasons why I wanted to get a PS2 in 2003. I always come back to this game, and I have never felt bored of replaying it over and over again. This game is easily amongst one of the best PS2 games in my book. I've made multiple Tenchu Wrath of Heaven content on this channel and on my second channel. For this channel, I've done live stream playthroughs of all of the 3 main campaigns as well as the extra mission. For the second channel, I've done all of the characters, all of the layouts on hard difficulty and did them all perfectly. As of 2023, we are celebrating 20 years of the game's initial release. There are a lot to talk about this game, so let's take a 20-year retrospective look of Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. February 26th, 1998. A ninja game was released in Japan as a PlayStation exclusive, developed by Acquire and published by Sony Music Entertainment Japan. The game is called Tenchu. It was then released to North America and worldwide in 31st of August 1998 by the publisher Activision. The worldwide title is called Tenchu Stealth Assassins. The title Tenchu came from 2 Japanese kanji letters, Ten, which means heaven, and Chu, which means death penalty. So, in literal terms, the Tenchu game is all about playing as a ninja giving death punishment to your enemies. The first Tenchu game was pitched in 1996 by Japanese game developer Endo Takuma. Endo-san founded his own developer company called Acquire. Originally, he pitched the idea to Sony Music Entertainment Japan to create a 3D ninja game set in modern times. However, Endo-san and his team decided to switch settings during the early stage of development and went into feudal Japan instead. Thus, the Tenchu series we all know was born. Tenchu on the PlayStation has 2 games, Tenchu Stealth Assassins and Tenchu 2 Birth of the Stealth Assassins. After the release of the second game, Activision, who was the publisher in North America, decided to buy the Tenchu IP from Acquire in the year 2000. As a result, Activision gave the development to a studio called K2. Since Tenchu was in the hands of K2 in development, this means Endo Takuma's involvement with the series has ended. The third Tenchu game was directed by Kodama Mitsuo, one of the co-founders of K2. Kodama-san was a graphic designer for SNK since 1989. His most prominent role in SNK as a graphic designer was in The King of Fighters 94, where he acted as the graphics director for both the characters and the stages. Considering that Activision owned the IP at the time, the third Tenchu game was released first in North America before Japan. Enter 5th of March 2003. A new Tenchu game was released called Tenchu Wrath of Heaven, exclusive for the PlayStation 2. The game later came out in Japan in 24th of April 2003, published by From Software. For the game's music, Asakura Noriyuki returned as the composer. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Asakura Noriyuki, he is most famous for composing the soundtracks for Rurouni Kenshin the anime. He did a really amazing job for this game, and he also created one of the best opening songs in any video game.
That was beautiful.
So that's pretty much the summary on the history how Tenchu Wrath of Heaven came to be. Let's talk about what's in the game, mainly the story and the core gameplay. The story of Wrath of Heaven takes place directly after the first game, Stealth Assassins. Now, the story differs with the three characters you play as in the game. However, every event of the story takes place after Rikimaru defeated Lord Mayo at the end of Stealth Assassins. Let's start with Rikimaru's story. At the end of Stealth Assassins, Rikimaru sacrificed himself to protect Ayame and Princess Kiku, leaving him trapped in a pile of boulders. However, Rikimaru managed to save himself by entering a portal that teleports him to the 21st century. During his time in the 21st century, Rikimaru helped to slay an evil businessman called Mr. D CEO. Although this happened early in the story, but you played this part of the game as an extra mission after you completed all the three main campaigns. A year after the events of Stealth Assassins, Rikimaru reports back to his lord, Goda. His presence showed that he survived the boulders after defeating Lord Mayo. Unknowing to everyone, however, the Rikimaru that came before Lord Goda was actually a shadow clone of himself. The real Rikimaru was still trapped in the 21st century. During a mission in the limestone cavern, the Rikimaru clone was killed by his rival Onikage. This prompted the real Rikimaru to return from the 21st century. With the real Rikimaru coming back, he was assigned for a new mission from Lord Goda. His mission is to slay an evil wizard named Tenrai. Tenrai being the main antagonist of Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. Moving on to Ayame's story, her story revolves around finding three sacred jewels that's said to give unlimited power to those who possess them. The jewels are Heaven, Earth, and Virtue. Ayame must find all three jewels before they fall into the hands of evil. The one man who wants all three jewels for his own evil is none other than Tenrai himself. The third character in the game is a new character introduced in this game. He is Fujioka Teshu, doctor by day and vigilante assassin by night. Unlike Rikimaru and Ayame, he does not work under Lord Goda's command. Instead, he is part of an underground assassin organization called Muzen. Teshu's job involves killing corrupt officials. He only accepts tasks that serve justice for the people. In Teshu's story, he was betrayed by a high-ranking Muzen member, Jinai. He found out that Jinai has betrayed the Muzen during his mission at the Buddha temple. Halfway through the end of Teshu's campaign, he sets on a mission to find Jinai and punish him for his betrayal. Now, the three characters have completely different stories with each of their own individual endings. They don't really connect with each other, canonically speaking. However, some events somewhat tie to each other. For example, Rikimaru and Teshu developed a short rivalry with each other. Teshu's first mission somewhat connects with Rikimaru's first mission. Both characters' first mission were to slay the evil merchant Nasu and Echigoya. In both stories, Rikimaru slayed Nasu. However, there is a different follow-up in Teshu's story. Teshu decided to visit Goda's castle and teach Rikimaru a lesson for stealing his prey. So that's the summary of each character's story in this game. Now, let's talk about the gameplay aspect of Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. Since Tenchu Wrath of Heaven was the first Tenchu game to be released for the PS2, the game was designed to fully utilize the DualShock PlayStation 2 controller. This means the game fully uses the two analogs on the controller. Unlike the two previous Tenchu games, those games were designed mainly for the classic PlayStation controller without the analogs. So let's talk about the controls first. Generally speaking, the game plays just like the previous two Tenchu games. Unlike the previous two Tenchu games, however, characters move strictly using the left analog stick, while the camera is controlled using the right analog stick. The D-pad is used for scrolling items left and right. X is jump, square is attack, triangle is item use, circle is block, and R1 is crouch. The controls feel so much better since you can move freely using the analog stick. Games that's all about precise timing for stealth requires the player to move fluently. K2 completely ditched the tank controller style of the previous two games, so you have a better time performing perfect executions in this game for sure. The three main playable characters, all have their own specific sets of moves that reflects their personality really well. Rikimaru's gameplay style is very basic and direct, as he wastes no time going for a stealth kill. His moves are less flashy than others, but it does suit his classic ninja style as a character. His melee attacks are pretty standard. He's a fitting choice for a first-time playthrough of Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. Ayame's gameplay style is more agile and flashy. A lot of her stealth kills are flashier than that of Rikimaru, which again reflects her personality really well. She also uses her legs a lot, whether it's to snap the enemy's neck or for close-range melee attack. Once you have beaten Rikimaru and Ayame's campaign, you will unlock Tenchu. Now, unlike Rikimaru and Ayame who use weapons, Tenchu uses his fist. Instead of ninjutsu, Tenchu is a master of taijutsu. During stealth kills, Tenchu will either use his fists to break his opponent's anatomy or use needles to puncture his opponent. During melee combat, he uses his brute strength to pummel his enemies. For the story campaign, Rikimaru and Ayame have 10 missions, while Tenchu only has 6 missions. Each mission has 3 different layouts. Different layouts mean enemies' positioning are different in their respective maps. Almost every mission has a boss fight as well that you fight at the end of the mission. Just like the previous Tenchu games, you will have to prepare before the mission by selecting items that you want to use. You can get more useful items depending on how well you perform on a certain mission. The more stealth kills you do, and the less you get spotted by the enemy, the better. You can even get a special items reward if you finish a mission with the Grandmaster rank, the highest rank in the game. For Rikimaru and Ayame's campaign, you'll notice these Japanese scriptures on the top of the health bar. Whenever you perform a stealth kill, it fills up the scriptures. Once you fill up all of them, you will unlock a special skill. You can only unlock one special skill per mission. There are 9 total skills that you can unlock for each Rikimaru and Ayame respectively, so it's best to collect all 9 skills before you reach the 10th mission. Tenchu's campaign, on the other hand, does not allow you to unlock skills. The better you perform on a mission with Tenchu, the more money you will earn. Money is used to buy items in preparation before you start the mission. This game also introduced what I like to call a super move. When you unlock Rikimaru and Ayame's final skill, you unlock the ability to perform a one-hit kill move called the Wrath of Heaven. To perform this move, you press X and circle together. Once you hit the Wrath of Heaven on an enemy, it kills them instantly. However, it is not without a price. The move will drain your HP down to 1, and so you need to make sure that you connect this move to your enemy. Tenchu's super move is different, and it is available by default. Since he's a master of taijutsu, his super move is the 8 Gates. I'm not even joking. This is very similar to the 8 Gates move that Guy and Lee did in Naruto. During his 8 Gates stance, every punch will set the enemy on fire. It's an effective attack during boss fights. There is one downside to this game compared to the previous entry. Once you successfully kill an enemy, you cannot drag the body and hide it somewhere else. I still have no idea why K2 decided to remove this ability, though I don't think the absence of it diminished the entire game. The fluid controls of the game is enough to make this one of the best, if not the best Tenchu game in the series. Personally, it's always down to the controls and gameplay to make a game good and stand the test of time. Tenchu Wrath of Heaven was the first Tenchu game to introduce a multiplayer mode. There are 2 types of multiplayer modes in this game, Versus and Co-op. In Versus mode, you can choose among 18 different characters to play as. You unlock the characters in this mode by completing the story campaign for Rikimaru, Ayame, and Tenchu. Outside of the main 3 characters, they are enemies that you encounter or bosses that you fight in the story. Every single one of them has a unique super attack you can do by pressing X and circle together. Once you and your opponent have chosen a character, you pick 1 out of 6 stages as your battleground. After that, you can have fun beating each other up for 5 minutes. It may doesn't seem much, but this is the mode I had a lot of fun playing with friends back when I was a kid. Not to mention, you can play as Tatsumaru in Versus mode. Hands down, the coolest character in the game.
How about this? You need more training.
In co-op mode, you can only play as 3 characters, Rikimaru, Ayame, and Tenchu. You can select 1 out of 6 missions. 5 of these missions are like your standard Tenchu missions, and the last mission is a boss rush. You can also perform a team stealth kill in co-op mode. Multiplayer mode is missing in a lot of future Tenchu games. The only time it came back was in Tenchu Z, where you can actually play 4 players online. It's a shame, honestly. If there is a chance in the future that From Software decide to drop a new Tenchu game, I hope they bring back multiplayer modes. Once again, this is just me wishing. 9th of March 2004, a year after the release of Tenchu Wrath of Heaven, an improved expansion of the game was released exclusively for Microsoft Xbox called Tenchu Return from Darkness. The game was more or less the same as Tenchu Wrath of Heaven, with some additional content and improvements. The game features 2 extra stages and some additional characters that you can play in versus mode. Remember when I said Tenchu Wrath of Heaven removed the ability to drag dead bodies? Well, in this game, the ability is back. You can hide a dead body after you kill an enemy to make sure you don't alert the other guards. Also, enemies can summon call for help whenever you are being spotted. This actually makes for a more challenging experience in my opinion. I haven't got a chance to play this game back in the day since I never owned an original Xbox. However, I was able to try out the game for a bit using the Xbox emulator Zemu. I might get a better look eventually when I start playing this game a lot more. But for now, these are the things I know so far from the game. This version of the game also has a PSP port that came out in 2010. Unfortunately, the PSP port of Tenchu Return from Darkness is a Japanese exclusive, though you can still try it out by using a PSP emulator like PPSSPP. Tenchu Wrath of Heaven is one of my all-time favorite games for the PlayStation 2. It is definitely my favorite ninja game ever made, and it's a game where I always come back to play. I've never gotten bored whenever I decide to boot up Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. It's still worth playing even after 20 years. In regards to the Tenchu series, the last true Tenchu game that we got was Tenchu Shadow Assassins for the Nintendo Wii and the Sony PSP back in 2009. We haven't got any Tenchu game for 14 years now. This is not counting 2010 re-releases of Wrath of Heaven and Fatal Shadows on the PSP. Considering From Software owns the rights to the Tenchu IP, I do believe Tenchu deserved to make an epic comeback. From Software is bringing back the Armored Core series with Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon, and I think they need to do the same with Tenchu. A new Tenchu game with the visuals of Dark Souls would look absolutely stunning. Once again, this is only if From Software decides to bring back Tenchu. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen, a 20-year retrospective look of Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. What are your thoughts on this game? Do you have any memories in regards to this game after 20 years? Let me know in the comment section below. With that being said, this is me, Profar. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give me a thumbs down. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Join the Profar Mokoy Hunter X Discord server if you guys want to hang out with the boys and myself. And I'll see you guys in the next video.